This is day 1 of the April 92 7-day retreat at Springwater. During the first talk, right at the very outset of this retreat, let us talk about listening. We did some of this last night, but quite a number of people were not here last night. So we will talk freshly about listening. Listening to a talk such as this, which means listening to each other and listening to oneself. And in this connection, we will look at this whole phenomenon of authority, which we human beings have cultivated and developed to such a degree. We will look at it and we will also wonder whether there can be listening without authority, speaking without authority, what we mean by all of that. To understand it deeply, then there can be a change in our mental and physical structures when we understand how they operate so unconsciously, so habitually. And we will question, look into what is our relationship with each other, you and me. Right now, during this talk, during the retreat, when you come to meetings, or when we meet together. We do it every time on the first day of retreat. Because there are new people here who've never been here before, and there are people here who have been here before, and those who haven't been here in a long time. And it's always a marvelous thing to freshly look at an old problem. Not just as an old problem, but as one which crops up all the time. Listening according to old images and ideas rather than listening now, as for the first time. We have had a long training in listening. Not as little babies or very small children. Then the eyes and ears were open. Receiving what was there, not having names for it, and until pleasure or pain occurred in consequence of sights or sounds. There was no prejudice against, or no fear of, or no craving for special sights and sounds. Some of it, of course, is inborn, the sight of the nipple, smell of the mother. We won't go into all of that. But all during our life with others, with parents, siblings, teachers, peers, our listening has been either trained or conditioned to become narrow, conditioned by the pleasure and pain of what was heard, not wanting to hear what feels painful, but longing to hear what is pleasurable. And in neither case, the channels being open to just allow to receive what's there. We have learned very early to protect ourselves from painful sounds, not just the amplitude of it, which is inbuilt in a baby. A baby cries, sensitive baby, cries at the sound of a loud noise. It's too much. Cries, expresses its shock or displeasure by crying. I'm not talking just about the loud noise, but also the angry voices that we have all heard, the scolding, the blaming, or the exhorting, pay attention, listen to me, you never listen, why can't you listen? Or just maybe with not much anger or feeling, but being made to listen in school by constant instruction or command, and told at the same time that we weren't listening. If two children have some private whistling conversation in a classroom and listening very attentively to that, the teacher says, you're not listening, because you're not listening to what she is saying or he is saying. Listen to me. And maybe there's already, from this long exhortation to listen, a built-in resistance to listen or even to hear that word. Causes a resistance because there's been so much bullying connected with it, or bossing, or humiliation, power. In Europe, more than here, one of the punishing gestures of a parent is taking a child by the ear, which implies, pull out your ear so you listen what I'm saying. Is there already an instantaneous, programmatic resistance to this word listen? So I have to be careful in talking, not just to arouse programs, or is this the atmosphere, the space and quietness in which, when resistance comes up based on past problems, past humiliation or pain, when that all comes up, to shed light on it so we can become aware of it, see what is all underlying our resistances and narrownesses in our relationship with each other, which, if there weren't all these resistances and narrownesses, could be a flowing interchange of information and goodwill and affection. Maybe at times misunderstanding and anger aroused by misunderstanding, but there would be the openness to listen to what the other person says, why she got angry, why I got hurt. We could talk about it and listen both to the whole complex stuff that makes someone say something, and the whole complex stuff in which I'm listening, or rather not listening so openly. That's what we're trying to do here. Shed light, become aware, open up, point out, so that due to this looking at it together, thinking about it together, a growing awareness together, then maybe in our daily life there can be some new way of relating by openly listening to ourselves and each other. And the birds, do they listen to each other, I wonder? They're communicating all kinds of things. They seem to be in very close connection with each other. getting the message when one intrudes in the territory. A tiny bird can chase out a big bird. The big bird doesn't gather more big birds and come back for revenge. Just stays away. Maybe tries again, but then stays away. Because very little is carried probably in animals of past events as memory, as an activator of behavior now. Only what is necessary to remember how to build a nest. That's all programmed there. And it's a marvel. We're watching right now under the roof of our front porch in the corner. 2 red-throated birds, I forget their name, are building a nest. Can I but marvel? They don't have an engineering degree. How do they know it? The way they look for little twigs, and usually not just one, then they want another one. One then may drop out of the beak or not. How it's pasted and woven together and fits. They didn't need to listen to any lectures. It's all there, the program. So how are we listening to this talk here? And I'm listening to what I'm saying. If I'm not listening, I may say all kinds of stuff in rote, mechanically, which I may not want to say, so I have to listen very carefully and look. And in the presence of this listening and looking right now, words come and are found to be accurate or approximating what needs to be said or not. If it's not, doesn't seem the right word, then there is a waiting for a better word, which seems to fit more what is seen to be the thing to say right now. I don't know how this whole thing works. I'm just beginning to be more aware of it. But that is quite clear, that listening is not just taking place in the person who's not talking, but also in the one who's talking. You're also listening to the airplane, the birds, the yawn. It's all there, openly, not judged, not rejected or resisted. Are we resisting the airplane because it interferes with listening to the talk? Or can it be there without interfering? If it does interfere, maybe it's helpful to really concentrate on the talk. Because if we just think of airplanes and flying back home, and next time I'm going to fly business class, I didn't like the food, then then we're just paying attention to the video, which was triggered by hearing an airplane. See, that's the art of listening, to hear that, but not get caught up in the associations that exist with airplanes. They do exist. They're ready to jump in when what? Maybe some resistance to listening to this talk may touch me too closely. I don't want to hear about maybe not being a good listener or whatever has already been associated. So I rather think of airplanes, maybe. But it is a possibility for human beings to be open to all that's happening and yet pay attention to what is being said. The meaning of the words, but not just the meaning of the words, but what it means deeply. The reactions that are being aroused. To see those reactions of agreement, disagreement, wanting to get away, not hear it. If you notice that during a talk, and attention gets more and more sensitive and subtle with this work, if you notice an aversion to something that is being said, watch it and keep listening, both to the aversion and to what is being said, to learn something. If that isn't noticed, the mind goes off into a daydream. By which I'm not saying that all our daydreaming is due to aversion to listening to what is being said. I'm not making any generalizations. But to find out for yourself. Sometimes people tell me this. I heard some of what you said and then I was just drifting off. And then maybe the talk came in again into some awareness and then I was drifting again. Can one discern here and there that something arouses fear, self-protection, and with that the easy taking over of daydreaming? Because I don't want to be hurt. I don't want to look at what I don't like about myself or what I'm afraid I may discover about myself. So we were asking last night, why are we here? What do we come here for? To a place in the sort of in the middle of nowhere. To get experiences, samadhi or bliss experiences. We may have had those in the past and want those again. And that may be a big motive in coming here. Not to judge, I'm not judging it, to look and to understand. That's the crucial thing, not to judge. Because then a mind and body that judges is not open to listen to what is actually there. So, are we here maybe to discover something about ourselves? To find out about ourselves? And find out about the fear of something being pointed out that's hurting? That makes the body-mind contract and say no more. I'd rather be off on my own. Where nobody bothers me, nobody says things. Maybe nice to be off on one's own, where nobody says anything. But is one really looking there? Is one being challenged? Maybe one is. Not saying you have to come here in order to discover things about yourself. But now that you are here, can we discover together and also find out the resistances, the aversions, the fears, the self-protection, which wards off input, the listening channels narrow or close, or distort what is being said. That's the amazing thing. The moment fear or pleasure seeking is involved in our state of being, we don't hear accurately anymore most of the time. And the thinking is also affected, because together with what is heard goes the thinking process, explaining and commenting, reacting to what is being said. And it is distorted when fear or wanting pleasure are at the root of the listening, are generating that one wants to hear something pleasurable or is afraid of hearing something painful. Then everything in his organism is affected, not to function openly and naturally anymore. Can one see that for oneself, discover it as it happens? Sometimes, most of the time, we discover things after they happen. But it's possible that the discovery comes closer and closer to the moment at which something is actually taking place. And if there's openness right this moment when you say something, then maybe the reaction that comes up, the protectiveness or almost getting hurt, almost offending, that all comes into view before it has manifested and expressed itself explicitly. It's already seen before it's happened. And then it may not have to happen. And the channels remain open between you and me. And misunderstanding does not occur. Because the protectiveness, the aversion, the defensiveness, the fear is being seen. Seen as an old, ingrained, programmed response to something new and fresh to which it may not at all be appropriate. Most likely it's not appropriate because all of our protective and aggressive and hurting responses come from the past, most of them from when we were very, very small, unable to survive on our own, very, very dependent. And very often not allowed to react in the way that a baby or small child naturally reacts. Scream, have some kind of release mechanism for discomfort, and by that free itself from the whole incident. That was often punished or controlled, subdued by the parent who couldn't take it due to her own training or his own training as a child. Our trainings get perpetuated from generation to generation to generation to generation. There's no blame anywhere. There's only either the darkness of ignorance, not knowing what we're doing, not aware, or some light coming in. Becoming aware, seeing, being present with what we're doing as so much automaton. And with awareness and light, what is automatic is freed. It doesn't have to continue, or if it continues, it's understood. And peters out unless the clouds draw again. The inside is covered up by fear, desire, and their momentum, which is all embedded in programming, conditioning. So, how can we listen to each other freshly? Or can we? Let's leave the how out, because I don't know how. Just by doing it. We're doing it together, are we? Now? 1, 2, 3, 5 people listening. Do we affect each other in listening? Caw, caw, caw. Drip, drip, or whatever the sounds are. And in listening to one person talking, which is the case during these talks, there's only one person who's giving talks at the center. Are we ascribing authority to this person? Even if there were 2 or 3, there could very likely be ascribed authority to 2 or 3, 5, 6, or 10. Anybody who sits there talking to people becomes an authority. Can we watch that movement? Because that very movement of imaging authority, seeing somebody as authoritative, expert, in the know, superior, wiser. That tendency has also a damaging effect upon the listening, a narrowing or a coloring effect. If I listen to somebody who I think and therefore imagine to be a great authority, will I be as free to look and test out for myself whether what is said is really so? Or am I much more inclined to take it over, because this is how we've been trained in school, in church, in many spiritual training centers, to take the word of the teacher or the minister or priest or guru for being the truth, to believe it and to wait for later to find out for oneself. Events in the future of this life, in the future of future lives, events may bring about that I too may see as clearly as the spiritual teacher. But also in our secular teaching we have learned to assign authority, and maybe in the secular teaching it is more appropriate because the math teacher, history teacher has more knowledge and information, just like books, maybe also the intelligence to convey it very vividly, interestingly. But still one does not have to make something more out of this person than what he or she is, a source of information, a source of looking and listening quietly, openly, a source of looking clearly and seeing clearly together. Can we watch our desire to make things out of people? To have security in the knowledge that he or she knows and I'm close to him or her, therefore it'll rub off? Or do we see in listening and talking here the necessity to see for ourselves the truth of what is said? Not believe it, not take it over, not buy it, or propound it without understanding it, but to wonder for ourselves. Particularly some things that are said strike one deeply. One does not know is it true or not, but something hits very deeply. I remember this all along. Something somebody said or wrote struck very deeply and stayed there, nagging, wanting to be understood, wanting to be tested or to be found out directly, or just wondering, what did he mean by that? It sounds so true, and yet I don't really understand it. People say that to me too. I don't understand what you're saying. Sometimes a feeling of struggle involved in that. And just because one doesn't understand what somebody is saying, if it somehow strikes deeply, not to throw it out or say this is nonsense. He or she is just talking about pies in the sky, I've been told, talking about pie in the sky. Let's leave off labeling and just wonder, particularly if something hits one. Maybe hits one that one wants to rebel against it or resist it. Or that one feels it sounds so true, but I can't quite understand it. Let it sit there and simmer. The mind may carry it, and who knows when, this instant or the next, it may become very clear what this means. Not the verbal meaning, but existentially, directly seeing for oneself that there is no division between you and me, other than the fact that there are two separate bodies, which is not being denied. See, authority is not only assigned by the listener or what is called a follower of someone. The speaker, the people who talk and are conducting retreats may cultivate this authority in many gross and subtle ways. I'm always open to someone mentioning, aren't you cultivating authority by doing this or that? By being the only one who speaks, that's been often brought up. Well, we dialogue about these things when somebody needs to look into that more, or question it, clarify it. But I keep looking. I'm not conscious of trying to cultivate authority in this place. On the contrary, when you and I talk with each other, dialogue, or look at something, without there being something in the mind about you or me, then the thing flows smoothly and deeply. Whereas if there's an image lodged in your mind or my mind about what you are or I am or you are, then there is a blocked flow. The flow that goes through the image is already affected. If I have an image of you, I usually want to keep it, attached to it, justify it, defend it. Because we do live, we said that last night, we live most of the time in images, in memories, in anticipations, in stories about you and me. This is how we live. More than living on the ground, in the air, in touch with grass and trees, or if we live in buildings, in touch with the buildings, with the sky, sun or moon. That's very peripheral to most human beings' lives these days. What is central and overwhelming is the living in fantasy, in ideas, in imagery, historical imagery about my people and your people, my religion and yours, my family, my nationality or ideology and yours, and subtler things of my capacities, my knowledge, my superiority or inferiority. Ideas. The proliferation of them and the attachment to them, and the misunderstanding, the deception to think that they are real, that they represent something true, is tremendous among human beings, not among animals, but among human beings. So, can in a week or a few days of living here quietly, silently, sensitively with each other, alone as well as together, can there be some how would you say, things becoming perforated, little spots of light here and there, little insights here and there. A growing awareness of what is going on, not experiences of floods of light. If that happens, it happens on its own. And to let it go when it finishes. But the important thing is in our daily living together to see and understand and hear what we're saying and doing. And also see and hear what you're saying and doing. So my reactionary immediate anger gives way to wondering, well, what did he really say? And what was it that I did that aroused this reaction? and sort of opening it up broader and broader to take everything in, including the distant airplane. If this work is done in all seriousness, and by this I don't mean taking up an identity of being a serious person, but really seeing the importance of it. The pain we cause ourselves and each other, the suffering, the sorrow, and very often the attachment to that too. We get very attached to our sorrow, our suffering, because there's an identity of being a victim, constantly victimized, and so the storyline says, well, they did me in again, well, just figures. And then this constantly simmering resentment against being done in. Whatever it is, I'm just picking on something. It's amazing by becoming more and more interested in listening, taking time out for quiet looking and listening, without outside stimulation, which we're all so addicted to. Then it may suddenly happen that we realize when we didn't get hurt this time, we didn't get angry. How come? The mind maybe was openly quiet. And the connection between the input, somebody saying something, and the angry reaction or the hurt feeling, the connection didn't take place because there was awareness, or there is. Awareness, understanding of this whole process. And what a saving of energy when the connection doesn't take place. If it does take place, all the energy goes into anger, mulling it over, defense, aggravating it by more thinking and storying about it. Nursing the hurt and maybe unconsciously nursing revenge, trying to get one in to the person who did it or to someone else who may be weaker, which is not said judgmentally, it is factually, this is how we live. All we need is to look and observe. Inwardly, outwardly, deeply, openly, without becoming an authority on it. You know what helps in not becoming an authority is to keep looking into oneself. All of what is being said is observable in oneself. We share the same structures, mental structures, physical structures, same connections, neural, chemical, electrical connections, the same capacity to think, to remember, to anticipate. The same connection between memory and hurt, and the desire to relieve this hurt by doing hurt to someone else. Why it is all there, I don't know, but it is there. If one looks honestly, one discovers it. And if it's discovered, it may not have to continue, at least for at certain times, not painting a picture of the ideal human being. Please don't misunderstand or misconstrue what is being said as putting up now an image of how I should be when I come out of here or if I do this work. If that happens, then to to learn about how quickly we build a new image of what we should be like, and then live to fulfill this image rather than to look at image building as it happens right now, and be free of it as it is discovered right now, and listen to the woodpecker, not more energy into building more pictures about myself and attaching to them. So what is our relationship with each other after 3/4 of an hour, I guess I've talked, a little bit less. What is our relationship? Can we at times listen and look as one mind? One looking, one listening, one discovering. Let's watch throughout this retreat. What is our relationship as you sit in the solarium to come to a meeting? Some people are ahead of you. There's already a conditioned response to waiting to see somebody behind 2 double doors, which predates my sitting in there. It's much older than this occasion here. And it's up for looks, up for questioning it. The heart may already be pounding fast. Most people report this, particularly if somebody is new. Sometimes somebody has been here for a long time and says, it's the craziest thing, my heart is still pounding. Of course, there's a connection there with whatever the memory has thrown into connection. I may not even remember what it was. The memory has gone so fast. It didn't come to the conscious mind. But the heart pounding testifies to the fact that a memory is activated. A little child sitting out there without any memory of school or dentist or wouldn't we probably knock at the door once to come in or open it? And it's nothing wrong or debilitating to come into a room with a pounding heart. It'd be nice if it didn't, but so as it is, not to interpret that. Because this is the other tricky thing, the heart pounding and maybe the breath being a little bit shorter, or all the manifestations of some fear, excitement, that may be interpreted by the brain to mean there's something to be afraid of. That's where the mistake is being made. There's nothing to be afraid of. I'm a human being like you are. Same processes going on. We can look at it together. And the less you have ideas about me and the less I have ideas about you as what you are. If we can meet on a friendly basis, friendly, affectionate, interested in each other, interested to meet, even if we have met for 10, 12 years, and when you come in, we're meeting for the first time, now, today, right now, it's the first time. But you may not discern my absence of ideas if you have ideas of me and you project them onto me. It's amazing how we can miss perceive someone by projecting onto them teacher, authority, religious, this and that, woman, old. And we're all of that and none of that. It's just ideas. What we really are, at this instant, what am I? I couldn't even say. Because there's crows cawing, and people moving, breath and talk, fairly cool air, some hotness in the sweater, a little wet on the back. All of that is there. Talking, listening. So how could I say what I am? How could I say what you are? I can't right now because we're listening, we're open, here, together. I have to climb into the files, into the file chamber to pull out a file what you are. And then the mind isn't that open anymore. Now it's perusing files, documents, past ideas, past memories, which I'm not saying is bad, but it's a different way of being with each other. And sometimes files come in handy. Sometimes a person will say, remember I told you such and such happened to me, and today it's like this or so, and then the file pops up and it's helpful to hear what happened. It's interesting. I don't have to make an image out of you because of that, because I'm well aware how changeable we are and how hurtful or damaging it is to cast somebody in the image of a past happening, past experience, past incident, and then to hold on to this. It's like imprisoning a person and imprisoning the perception of this person. That's why all of the things that we do sometimes to help each other, tell openly about ourselves. We may get together in a support group or group counseling or whatever, and everybody tells about themselves very openly, vulnerably. And it can be very beautiful, but it's a very great danger. And then now I remember about you. I've made an image of you. This is how you are. And mind does not even do this intentionally, it does it habitually. So how can we know about each other and past incidents and yet be here in the presence, not dominated by this memory of what you did yesterday, a month ago, 10 years ago, or 50 years ago? And I assure you, as we are more and more in the presence of each other, some of these memories which are unnecessary fade away. They may not be available anymore. The connections have atrophied. It happens that way. If they're not used over a long period of time, whatever is there physiologically is not maintained. It decays like an old building. And sometimes people say, I don't know about this work, my memory is getting shoddier all the time, -2. It happens that way. But usually the memories that go are useless ones anyways. And if something's very important, that's what we always share when we talk about this, then write it down and remember where you put the slip. And not be afraid of self-conscious in admitting that one has forgotten something. We don't have to be anything. We don't have to defend anything. We're just what we are from moment to moment, and that is very open, undefinable, unlimited. we will end here for today.